The Ukrainian avalanche continues in Washington, questions about impeachment. In the first five today, I want to hit just 3 points. Number one, if you had not heard, the president of the Ukraine, this gentleman Zelensky, who was on the phone with President Trump in July of this year, has made a statement saying he was not pushed during this campaign. We're going to play his comments in just a moment during this phone call. We're going to play some comments. It was actually recorded at the UN, a meeting between President Trump and Zelensky, reporters present. I just want to show a little bit of the camaraderie and the exchange between the two. So Zelensky said, I wasn't pushed into anything. Really matters to understand that. Number two, when the president released the transcript of the conversation between himself and Zelensky that launched this firestorm, a big piece that came out that was just missed by a lot in the media was the fact that CrowdStrike was mentioned. CrowdStrike being the organization, the only organization on the planet Earth, including even the FBI, that ever got to look at the DNC servers. It was CrowdStrike's take our word for it memo that all of the opinion you've ever heard expressed about the Russians hacked into the DNC servers, that whole argument is based on what CrowdStrike said. CrowdStrike was mentioned by President Trump on the phone with Zelensky, making Democrats in Washington very, very, very nervous, because if that CrowdStrike story comes out, if people begin to realize that the CrowdStrike review of the servers was not legitimate, that it was just actually done as a cover for the Dems to keep the real source of the hack into the DNC servers, it really crushes the entire Trump-Russia collusion. And the third point I want to make in this opening five today has to do with what I think is really happening, why this is all happening in Washington, and that is this. I think the Democrats very much want to take Biden out of the Democrat presidential nomination process. They never wanted an old white guy. Biden is up to his knees in corruption with up to his waist, if you in corruption with the Ukraine and his son Hunter Biden. They love to get Biden out, and frankly, what you'll hear more about later in the show, this will take Hillary out of contention too. And if you are thinking, well, Hillary's not running, not so fast, I will never believe there'll be a U.S. election in America where Hillary's not considering running unless she is no longer with us. So Hillary, also up to her eyeballs in corruption with Ukraine. Tell you more about that a little later in the show. But now I want to play in our first five. There was a clip. This is a series of snippets from the press conference at the UN between President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky. I believe it's very wonderful. Matt, the producer, has it ready.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to me to be here. And it's better to be on TV than by phone. Yeah. Thank you. And Mr. President, thank you very much. And I'm not the first time, truly say, in New York. Right. But I know that you've never been in Ukraine. That's right. And your predecessor also, how to say it in English, didn't find time. I mean that. Right. So can you give me a word that you will come to our great country?
Well, I'm going to try.
I want to thank you for invitation to Washington. Right. You invited me, but I think I'm sorry, but I think you forgot to tell me the date.
But whatever he can do in terms of corruption, because the corruption's massive. Now, when Biden's son walks away with millions of dollars from Ukraine and he knows nothing, and they're paying him millions of dollars, that's corruption. When Biden's son walks out of China with $1.5 billion in a fund, and the biggest funds in the world can't get money out of China, and he's there for one quick meeting and he flies in on Air Force Two, I think that's a horrible thing. I think it's a horrible thing, but I'm going far beyond that. I know the president, and I've read a lot about Ukraine, I've read a lot about a lot of countries. He wants to stop corruption. He was elected, I think, number one on the basis of stopping corruption. I think that somebody, if you look at what he did, it's so bad. Where his son, he goes to China, he walks away with $1.5 billion. He goes to Ukraine and he walks away with $50,000 a month and a lot of money in addition to that. And the whole thing with the prosecutor in Ukraine. And he's on tape. This isn't like maybe he did it, maybe he didn't. He's on tape.
This is why the American people love President Trump. he never backs down. He's in the middle of an impeachment inquiry in Washington. He has the Democrats and the media breathing down his throat. And instead of timidly backing up and going silent, he uses the opportunity at a UN hearing with the world's press right in front of him to point out that it is what he was doing in that call when he's getting to Zelensky was to say, I want to look into the Biden corruption, the Biden-Ukraine dealing, all that. And we're going to talk later in the show, the actual Ukrainian known interference in the 2016 elections on behalf of Hillary Clinton, the Democrats. This is President Trump saying, I'm not backing down. I have no problem with what I said. He's released the transcript of his phone call with Zelensky. The CrowdStrike word in the midst of that conversation, which many people were saying yesterday, why is he talking about CrowdStrike? He's talking about CrowdStrike because he's letting the Democrats know, I understand that whatever was in the DNC servers, there's a reason that the DNC never allowed the FBI or any other entity on the planet Earth to look at their servers all the time, saying, don't worry, everyone on the planet can trust CrowdStrike, a private organization, the founder of which connected to the Ukraine, the CrowdStrike, only entity that looked at the DNC servers from which the entire the Russians hacked into the servers with Trump's assistance to hurt the DNC in the 2016 elections, to hurt the Democrats. The entire scenario spun out of what CrowdStrike said. And Trump is telling the Democrats and the left, I know what you did, and I'm going to get to the bottom of it. Trump is not, in this phone call with Zelensky, he is not colluding with the Ukrainians to get the Ukrainians to interfere in the coming election 2020. He's exposing the corruption, draining the swamp of what happened in the 2016 American elections. And that, my friends, is today's First Five.